Taxes in India are not the property of the center or the states. All of them belong to a pool which is called the divisible pool of taxes that are available to the governments of India.
Who's the custodian? Where is this tax?
There was not a single person from southern India or western India on that commission. When I asked the chairman of the commission about it, and it's all male, but that in India doesn't seem to matter. He said, oh, one of them, IAS officer, became a governor. Now he's some shadowy figure in the Prime Minister's office. He said, oh, he's from Tamil Nadu cadre. The point is, he was from Odisha. So there was no representation of anyone from the south.
Do you notice or have you seen or observed any problem related to the south, particularly Tamil Nadu, where Tamil Nadu has lost out?
Just to tell your South Indian listeners and viewers, don't worry too much about the north. Look at yourself. Ask yourself why, when labor is so much cheaper in North India, you don't invest there.
Hello and welcome. My name is Sanket Upadhyay. You're watching The Federal. This program is called AI with Sanket. This is the AI of news because news in India today requires not artificial but analytical intelligence. Now we've seen budget 2026. A lot has been spoken about it. But along also came the Finance Commission, and there is a lot of buzz around that too. In this program, we will try to understand, number one, what is Finance Commission? What does it do? And number two, is there some injustice which has been done to the states or some states in this Finance Commission? Joining me right now is Mr. Rathin Roy, former member of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Committee, a very noted economist, celebrated author, writer, columnist. Thank you very much, Mr. Roy, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
My first question, and I'm going to start with the absolute basic here. What is the Finance Commission?
The Finance Commission is an institution that is absolutely unique to India. I have seen nothing equivalent to it anywhere in the world. So it's a constitutional body. It derives its legitimacy from Article 272 of the Constitution. And the way it works is as follows. On a certain day in a year, the government constitutes a technical body called the Finance Commission, constitutionally, and gives it a terms of reference. Now, what the Constitution says is the minimum terms of reference of the Finance Commission is to decide the disposition of what is called the divisible pool. What is the divisible pool? Taxes in India are not the property of the center or the states. All major taxes, whether it is personal income tax or corporate income tax or GST or import customs duties, all of them belong to a pool which is called the divisible pool of taxes that are available to the governments of India, i.e. the center, the union government and the states. Who should get how much? This body that is set up every 5 years decides for the next 5 years how much the center should get and how much the states should get. And from the state's share of the divisible pool, based on a formula which it devises, how much should each state get? That is the core business of the Finance Commission. It also determines over and above that, having decided the share of the center, if the state should get grants for specific purposes. The main grant in this commission was something called the revenue deficit grant. The principle there was that all states in India have to provide citizens of India with some basic functions. And every state may not be able to spend the amount of money required to provide those basic functions. Law and order, security, teachers, doctors. Either because it is poor or because it has other compulsions. Other compulsions are important. For example, Kerala has often received a revenue deficit grant because Kerala's income comes large chunk of Kerala's income comes from remittances. Now, remittances cannot be taxed. So Kerala may be rich, but the government suffers because the main source of income or an important source of income is non-taxable, right? So they would get this grant. Poorer states sometimes would get this grant also. It's not meant for states who manage the finances badly. It's meant for states who genuinely do not have a fiscal base that can allow them. So that is the main grant. Other grants have been given in life, given for irrigation in the old days, given for urbanization. And of late, the Finance Commission also recommends directly grants to urban and rural local bodies from the center. So that's the core function of a Finance Commission. And but
just wanted to know before you proceed. So that means all the taxes collected, the various types of taxes collected in this country are distributed, or how they need to be distributed over the next 5 years. That planning or that plan is executed by a body called the Finance Commission, correct? This is what I've been able to understand. Sir, who is the custodian of that money? So suppose if the tax has come, all this tax, who's the custodian? Where is this tax?
Okay, now it's important, it's not all taxes, it's all taxes that are constitutionally collected by the central government. So GST is a good example. There is central GST and there is state GST. State GST is collected by the states, that's not the business of the Finance Commission. So for every rupee, 50% is central GST, 50% is state GST. The central GST is then divided between the center and the states also. Likewise, income tax is collected by the central government, and then the states get part of it because it's not the central government's property. So the tax collection mechanism is that of the central government, right? But the central government collects those taxes. If you look at the budget, first page, you'll see something called gross tax revenue. That's the total taxes collected by the center. Then it will say less share of the states. And the remaining is net tax revenue to the center. So that money is dispatched from the central treasury to the states on a monthly basis by the central government.
Now let's proceed further. Yeah, sorry, please.
The magic in this is it is only for 5 years. So a Finance Commission is constituted. Let's say this latest one was constituted to make recommendations for 2026 to 2031. They submitted the report to government on the 30th of November. That was tabled in Parliament on the 1st of February, budget day. On the 2nd of February, there's no Finance Commission. So they are not there to be accountable to anybody. They vanish. Then again, in 2030, they will reconstitute a Finance Commission, which will come into existence with full constitutional powers until it submits its report, and then, a bit like Cinderella, it vanishes. Right? That is what is unique about this arrangement. It is a permanent temporary arrangement. So neither the center nor the states can hold the Finance Commission to account because there's no Finance Commission left with the moment it has submitted its report.
This is very interesting. So whatever decision they take, you can't hold them accountable because you can only hold someone accountable, someone who exists. So this body itself.
For which reason the Finance Commission only recommends the report to the center. And the center has to accept it, and it may not accept everything in it. So far, the main business of the Finance Commission, even this time, the recommendation on the devolution, that is how much the center keeps, how much the states keep, and the distribution within the states, that formula has been accepted by the center. Grants have also been accepted. Sometimes the center has not accepted some other recommendations, but the main recommendations are also accepted by the center. Now, the interesting thing in India is they do not require concurrent acceptance by the states.
This was about to be my question.
The states have no alternative but to take it as given so far. So far, there has been no protest to this. Let's see this time.
No, this time there's already a lot of rumbling, and I'm going to come to that in just a short moment. But Mr. Roy, who constitutes the Finance Commission? Obviously, these are people. So these are people, representatives of the central government, from the finance ministry, representatives of the state. Do states have any say where they can say that, I contributed this much, so ideally I should be getting this much of the tax?
No. The members of the Finance Commission are appointed by the President of India. Normally, the chairman of the Finance Commission is either a politician or an economist. So we have had 3 politicians, Mr. K.C. Neogi, Mr. K.C. Pant, Mr. Y.B. Chavan. And every other person has been appointed has been an economist. There could be IAS officers who happen to be economists, like Dr. Y.B. Reddy, who was both. He was an IAS officer and economist. Latest one is Arvind Panagaria. Before that, we had Vijay Ketkar. Then in the middle, we had N.K. Singh. He was not an economist. He was an IAS officer and a politician. He was a Rajya Sabha MP. He was appointed to it. So there are people like that. Then the commission, and I have something to say about this, normally then consists of a number of experts. Now, till my commission, I was chief economist for the 13th commission. Till my commission, they used to make sure that there was some north-south balance, some gender balance. Even, ethnically, there would be somebody from the northeast, a woman. 15th commission was entirely composed of northerners and eastern Indians. There was not a single person from southern India or western India on that commission. When I asked the chairman of the commission about it, and it's all male, but that in India doesn't seem to matter. He said, one of them, IAS officer, became a governor. Now he's some shadowy figure in the Prime Minister's office. He said, he's from Tamil Nadu cadre. The point is, he was from Odisha. So there was no representation of anyone from the south. This year again, the only representation from the south was a bureaucrat from Kerala who has spent her whole life in central government service. So of late, there has been a large bias, in my view, of how the members of the Finance Commission have been selected. They have been selected. I'm not saying that they favor the North, but optically, it's not been a very healthy story. But the states have no say. The whole commission is appointed by the President of India, which means the Prime Minister and the Cabinet, and the states have no say. Likewise, when they write the terms of reference, the states have no say. Now, what happens is, once constituted, the Finance Commission goes to each and every state. Depending on the commission, spends 2 to 4 days there, talks to everyone in the state, and the states submit what is called a memorandum to the Finance Commission. I've not yet looked at this report in detail, but normally till this commission, every single point made in every memorandum submitted to the Finance Commission is referred to in the report, and the report responds to it. It may not agree with it, it may not disagree with it, but it responds to the memorandum. Similarly, the central government sends in a memorandum to the Finance Commission, and that is responded to by the Finance Commission in its report.
Okay, so now we've spoken about the members of the Finance Commission. You've very clearly brought out the point of having representatives who are from South India versus what they do for South India. These are two totally different things. Now, I come to this very important question, not about representation in terms of who is a member in the Finance Commission, but in its report, what they have done or submitted. Do you notice, or have you seen or observed any problem related to the South? Because I draw your attention to this Times of India report, which says that the 16th Finance Commission has favored the North and neglected high-performing South Indian states, particularly Tamil Nadu, where Tamil Nadu has lost out.
See, that depends on your political point of view. First, there is the question of what the center gets and what the states get. The states, you must remember, are responsible for most, other than defense and railways, have the primary responsibility to deliver development, health, education, so on and so forth. But the center's share is much larger than the states. This commission and last commission, it is 59% of total tax revenue. The states only get 41%. So then you have to ask, what is the center spending its money on? For a while, the center said, look, we are spending a lot of money in the states also. So when we had a planning commission, they would give development grants to the states through the planning commission. Then the planning commission was abolished by this government. And then they said, no, you see, we have these centrally sponsored schemes where we are cost sharing with the states. Now, what has happened is that cost sharing increasingly has moved to putting more and more of the fiscal burden on the states. This is all states. In addition to that, the central government, not just this government, even Congress did it before, has done something very evil for about at least 30 years now. Very bad thing to do. It's a nasty and unnecessarily slimy, there's no other word for it, practice. Constitution provides for an exceptional levy of tax called cess or surcharge, which is supposed to be levied for exceptional purposes, such as a war exigency, for example, and other things, which the center may levy and not share with the states. This government and the previous one have constantly increased the proportion of these cesses and made them permanent and used it for their own purposes. For example, there is something called a Swachh Bharat cess that is not shared with the states. What is so temporary about Swachh Bharat, I don't understand. Likewise, in the education cess, there is a health cess. There are all sorts of cesses which the central government imposes, and it calls them cesses or surcharges so that they don't have to share it with the states. So let me give you an example. Suppose you have a 30% income tax rate. Right. Now that means that whatever taxes you collect, as per the devolution, 40% will go to the states and 60% roughly will go to the center. No, if I say no, the tax rate is 30%, now I'm going to put 2% Swachh Bharat cess, 1% education cess, 2% something, I don't know, Atal Bihari cess, 1% Deen Dayal cess, whatever you call it, right? That's then the income tax you're paying is 36%, but shareable proportion is only 30%. So in this respect, the center increasingly, in a very slimy and underhand way, has been very unfair to the states, all states. So that's on the vertical devolution. For the South, depending on what you can say, had a grouse. And the grouse was this. I spoke of the horizontal devolution. In that horizontal devolution, there are some optical nonsense, like fiscal something, prudence, climate change. That's all just nonsense. You can ignore it. The three main components of the horizontal devolution in terms of weightage that affected how much each state got was: number one, this is very interesting, pay attention carefully, listeners, inverse of the per capita income of a state, which meant the poorer the state, the greater their share. Inverse. This has varied in the last 5 commissions, that is the last 25 years, between 40 and 50% of the formula. Now, the second is area, which is uncontroversial. The third is population. Population, till the 14th Finance Commission, we used, just like for delimitation, the 1971 population. Now, since then, the population weightage has changed in favor of northern and eastern states as opposed to southern states. So the greater the weight you give to population, if you change the weight from 71 census to, as this commission has done, 2011 census, then you will obviously give more to the northern and eastern states. And that was done by the 15th commission. But the 15th commission did something quite smart. This commission has also done it. It shows you the tension. It brought in another weight called fertility. So the lower your fertility, the more you got from that weight. So the 2011 population move was partly counterbalanced by a fertility indicator. This time, what they have done is they have introduced a contribution to GDP indicator to counterbalance the inverse of per capita income. Net, what that has meant on the horizontal devolution is that no southern, so the relative ranking of states has remained the same. UP will get the most money, then Bihar, then the Bimaru states, then the poorest state then the East, all the Bimaru, Eastern Indian, Northern Indian, jo bhi naam hai unka. Not Haryana, but everybody else, because they're poor, right? And that per capita income thing is there. But they will get less than they would have got without that 10% contribution to GDP. What that has done is it has slightly increased the share of Kerala. It has slightly increased the share of Karnataka, Telangana, and Andhra Pradesh. It has left the share of Tamil Nadu constant. But what this commission has also done is it has removed the grants. So nobody is getting any grants. Now, earlier, the South Indian states would get a lot of grants. So it would be their total share per this formula plus grants. Especially Kerala would get a revenue deficit grant because of what I said earlier, because of the remittance issue, that a lot of their money comes from remittance. Remittances don't attract income tax, so they cannot benefit from the remittances, so they would get a grant. All grants have been abolished. All grants to state governments, not local bodies. So net, therefore, Tamil Nadu has lost. Net, the others have partially gained with this GDP component. So if you look at the situation today, what this Finance Commission has done is partially remove the total quantum of redistribution that was going to Northern and Eastern India. Only partially corrected for it. They still get much more than they contribute, but they get less than in the previous commission. right? Because that change of population has been counterbalanced by fertility, and the inverse of per capita income is been counterbalanced by contribution to GDP. That is the factual situation as it stands, but they all lose because the grants have been lost. So, to summarize, number one, this commission, like the last commission, given the central government's behavior on cesses, and given the central government's increasingly stipulating that the states must pay more and more, for example, on Narega or Jairam Jiki or Jai Hanuman or whatever they call it now, employment guarantee program. Earlier, the contribution of the center was 90% and the states was 10. Now they have made it 60% and 40%. 60 center, 40 states. So states have to shell out more for these centrally sponsored schemes. Watching that behavior and the cesses, there is no doubt that all states have lost out to the center. And within that, the South Indian states definitely have lost out, but not to the same extent as they lost out to the last commission. Some attempt has been made to address their grievance.
Now, Mr. Rathin Roy, here is the issue. See, a South Indian state like Tamil Nadu can say, I am being punished for being good on all indices, for ensuring greater per capita income, for greater industrialization, more contribution to GDP. So I am not getting what I am giving. This can be the grudge. But what should actually be the Finance Commission's mandate on how to distribute this tax? What is that matrix? You just explained how that matrix was tweaked or changed a little, and even then Tamil Nadu lost. So is there in your wisdom,
No, go on.
So in your wisdom, is there any other better way to distribute this tax or this collection?
See, this is not at this moment in life, at the juncture India is in. I'm afraid it cannot be viewed purely as a technocratic question. There is a very boring technocratic answer that many public finance economists like me will give you, and I'm sure they're going to be trotting it out in the months to come. I advise your listeners to ignore them. Things like fiscal capacity versus fiscal need. That is all very well in the textbooks. In the Union of India, the current situation is a politically very dangerous one. If your listeners believe in the principle of one person, one vote, whether you like it or not, we are today doing an injustice to northern and eastern India. Because parliament is delimited at the moment in such a way that the population of UP is getting fewer, and Bihar and northern and eastern India is getting less seats compared to their population, and the population of South India is getting more seats. So, on the basis of one person, one vote, we should do what is called a delimitation, which is redraw the boundaries of the Lok Sabha and therefore the Rajya Sabha, such that the number of seats that each voter in every part of India, same number of voters elect one MP. Right? If you do that, UP and Bihar in any one North Indian state or Eastern Indian state will have a permanent majority in parliament forever. Why would that matter? It would not matter unless it were the case that where the majority of the population of India lives, northern and eastern India, is poorer than Nepal. It is 4 times poorer than southern and western India. So the economic power is in southern India and western India. The political power is in northern India and eastern India. As long as the delimitation was unfair, there was a grand political bargain that was struck, which is the south is benefiting more than the north, is developing more than the north, but we are one country. The north has more political power than the south, so the north will give up, north and the east will give up some political power in exchange for a public transfer of resources, embodied in that inverse of GDP and the population. That was the bargain till today. Now, if you're an observer of contemporary politics, you will notice that it also happens to be the case that the political coalition running the Delhi Sultanate, the ones who run Delhi, and the ones who run northern India and most states in eastern India, one exception, West Bengal, have very little foothold in the south. And so, if there's a delimitation that happens now, it will actually mean a permanent political majority in northern and eastern India, and therefore possibly to a certain kind of political force. Then South Indians are asking, why should I continue to cross subsidize this? And what can I do not to cross subsidize it? That is one political battle. The second political battle is not a political battle, it's an intellectual question, which I think former finance minister of Tamil Nadu, currently electronics minister PTR, put much better than I did. He said, we don't object to transferring resources to the south, but there should be convergence. Why is the north and the east remaining poor while we are expanding? Tamil Nadu and UP were roughly equal in 1989. Today, Tamil Nadu is 4 times as rich as UP. But these transfers have been happening for the last 35 years. But nothing is happening there in terms of economic development. If there is no convergence, then I'm afraid I cannot think of a single country that has survived in the 20th century where, see, if you look at things like, this is important, I'll spend a minute on it. You take United States. Okay, all the rich people live where? They don't live in all these Trump places, Arizona and Mississippi. Nobody lives there. They live in California, New York, Illinois. They make money. They subsidize the poorer states. Take Europe. All these poor Europeans started Ireland, Lisbon, I don't know what they're called, Serbia, and it's not Serbia, they're not there. Romania, Portugal. Nobody lives there. I mean, people live basically in England, in the G7 countries, right? France, Germany, and Italy. So when the richer parts of a country live in the population majority areas, same thing for Germany as a country, same thing for Australia, they all live in the coastal provinces. Same thing for Brazil. In any kind of, plural polity like India or Brazil or, Canada, the most majority population provinces are also the richer ones. Naturally, more people live there. In our case, our majority population provinces are the poorer ones. In my research of history, there have been only 2 countries that have been like that in the 20th century. Neither of them exists anymore as a country. One was the former USSR, and the other is the former Yugoslavia. So this for India is an existential question. It's not a matter of squabbling about fairness anymore. It's a matter of understanding the root cause of this imbalance. The root cause of this imbalance is political power lies in the north and the east, economic power lies in the south and the west. I had said this when this finance commission was constituted. I think I know who it is. I'm not going to mention his name. But a wise soul in the government, they come very rarely, I'm afraid. Not political. Normally, finance commission terms of reference, they'll say do the vertical and horizontal, and then they'll give them 30 other things. Look at climate, look at ecology, look at irrigation, look at why children are not smiling in the evening. All sorts of bakwas is there. And then they write a lot of bakwas. This commission had a clean terms of reference. Just look at the vertical and horizontal devolution. That's it. Signal that was being sent is that we have a very serious political problem in front of us and you have to respond. On that count, I'm afraid the Finance Commission has failed us. I mean, it is a high thing to expect from a Finance Commission. I'm not blaming this Finance Commission. I am blaming them in the sense at this juncture of history, their historic responsibility was much greater than the 13th or 14th Commission. Given what I've outlined, I was hoping the Finance Commission would take this larger political problem and say, here are some potential solutions. For example, I have argued this. I'm not saying they should have done it. Welcome to hear other things. We can do a grand bargain. We can say until we will keep investing in northern and eastern India. And until such time as we see convergence happening, we will keep the delimitation of parliament where it is today. As the north and the east becomes more prosperous, we will go on increasing political delimitation so that there is economic and political convergence. And then there are some uncomfortable questions the south has to ask. Normally, when the south is richer than the north, you will have people from the north coming to the south to migrate and settle there. Like my family came, I shouldn't say Bangladesh, they'll repatriate me. They came 120 years ago. I hope I'm still eligible to live in this country. But I'm Maharashtrian. My father's family came from there 120 years ago. So did Bal Thakre's. And, that was okay. We became Maharashtrians. Nowadays, that's not happening. When somebody from UP or Bihar comes to Hyderabad or Tamil Nadu, they're called migrant labor. What is migrant labor in a country? How come we're not able to absorb them and make them? Then you wouldn't have a population problem. The population of South would go up. As UP people came here, became Tamilians, population of UP would go down. There'd be fewer of these speakers and be more Tamil speakers. That has not happened in our country. So there are these existential questions which I was expecting us to have a national debate on. I was hoping the Finance Commission. So to answer your question, therefore, the question is far bigger with many more dimensions than merely equal treatment of the states. When you have a situation where the majority population has political power but is so poor, not 10% poor, 4 times, 400% less rich than the minority population, you have a political tension which we have to urgently address, and we have not.
No, I get the point that you're making, but do you think that this is an issue this complex which you have raised? Uh, can this really be the mandate of an organization or a group like the Finance Commission, or this requires
it is not, it cannot be the mandate of the Finance Commission. However, technical people who work in public service, in my view, have a very important public duty, which is not to be purely technical. Otherwise, I can hire McKinsey to write the report. If you actually are an Indian and you live in India and you participate in the polity and you accept that the constitution of such a constitutional body, the institution of that, the promulgation of that body, means that you have to look at political reality and address it without necessarily solving the problem. But posing that as the central question, bedeviling, the constituents of the Indian Union at this time, then I think Finance Commission has failed its duty. It has not failed its duty to solve the problem. It has failed its duty to even bother to pose the problem. And that I feel sad about. As a constitutional body, it is my view that it had that responsibility. The TOR signaled it, and it refused to take it on.
All right, Mr. Rathin Roy, thank you so much for your time and for explaining in great detail what the Finance Commission has done, where it may have possibly gone wrong. And I guess you've given a lot of solutions also. Or perhaps some sort of spaces where the North and South can come together and coexist, continue to coexist like they're existing.
Just to tell your South Indian listeners and viewers, don't worry too much about the North. Look at yourself. Ask yourself why, when labor is so much cheaper in North India, you don't invest there. Ask yourself why, when Northern labor comes to South India, why they're only doing feudal and informal sector jobs. How come you're not using them to raise productivity? So I think the South has a lot of questions to ask in this existential context, which transcend the traditional questions of rich South, poor North. Because if we are going to live in a federation, then it is in everyone's interest that you have more inclusive and more egalitarian growth across India. And if that is not happening, then the investment hub of India has to at least be propositional and ask questions as to why that is not happening. And I'm afraid this is not happening in Southern India. This is not happening in Western India. And just saying that I collect more taxes is not going to solve your problem, because unfortunately, whether you like it or not, you may contribute more to taxes, but they have much more political power. So you'll have to buy that off. And there are ways to do it. You can buy that off harmoniously, or you can do it effectively. The choice is yours.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rathin Roy, for joining us. Thank you.